Right, moving on. So I'd like to introduce our very own Alastair Graham. Alastair, it says here, is the UK lead for Sparkgeo. I did know that, which is geospatial services company that employs awesome developers to shift geo workflows into automated processing chains on the cloud. And before he joined Sparkgeo, he was an Earth observation consultant. And he told me that this is the first time he's spoken in front of an audience for 3 years. So be nice to him, please.
Thanks very much, Ant. So I have a little 15-minute session here, and I just thought I'd do something very light in order to talk about basically some of the observations that I've seen having moved from Earth observation, where I was a freelancer and like my entire career was Earth observation, into Sparkgeo, which, as Ant said, is effectively a software development company that takes workflows, geospatial workflows, and moves them onto the web, as well as creating bespoke software for processing data. So the thing that I've been with Sparkgeo for just over a year, and I think that there's a couple of things that have really hit me as being very different between the majority of my experience in my career and moving into this company. And quite often in geospatial, we talk a lot about skills and what the skills are needed for the next generation. And this is my opinion on it. So, as I say, this is just my observations. So just to give you a quick idea of the types of things that I've done, basically, I started off doing a lot of desktop Earth observation. Then at some point, I moved through to Python notebooks and using larger data sets, maybe pulling in data sets from the cloud and that sort of thing. And then since moving to Sparkgeo, I've come into this sort of software development management role. And the changes that means is I've gone from using local data sets to sort of data sets that are on dedicated or remote storage to basically cloud APIs now. So we don't really have to deal with any of the data management. We just suck things in from other people's data stores and create the software that we need to do. Or we create APIs ourselves from our clients' data and then squirt those out to whoever needs them. Similarly, in terms of some of the methods, we've gone from really standard classifications like a land cover classification to using machine learning a lot more in the sort of last 10 years. Certainly, once Python tools became more developed, we were doing that. And now what we're doing is a lot more computer vision and deep learning, trying to pull features out of massive data sets that are both 2D, 3D, and 4D structured. So that's the sort of changes that I've seen, and that's sort of where this talk is coming from. So we've got Earth observation or with Van Damme there up in space versus the sort of software development model. And I guess the first thing is that in Earth observation, or at least the types of Earth observation that I was interacting with a lot, we were looking at code for research. And it was sort of code that worked and it got the job done, but it wasn't necessarily the nicest code. Whereas everything that I've seen since joining Sparkgeo is that we're looking at code for production. So we're looking at tests and we're looking for workflows that are robust and don't get broken by a new data set being added in and that sort of thing. We still have all these sort of research elements to it, but the actual process of creating the code is a lot more structured. We're also seeing a difference. So whereas in Earth observation, a lot of the sort of development has been local, where you might have a data set and you're trying, as I say, you're trying to do some research on that. You will be developing yourself and trying to just make sure that you get the answer that you're looking for whilst running that code on your system. What we see when it comes to geospatial software development is that everything is much more server oriented, and that we're really trying to make sure not only that we're developing on the server, but all of the software code is able to be run on multiple different platforms and that type of thing. So there's a difference in thought there. One of the major differences I've seen is that I've certainly in my career seen a lot of Earth observation users using GitHub for code storage, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, that's a brilliant way for sharing stuff. But the difference really seems to be that you're using all of the tooling that's built in behind the scenes in GitHub when you're looking at doing sort of software development. So making sure that you're using all of the issues and that you're pulling through GitHub actions and that sort of thing. And being able to do your CI/CD pipelines and just make sure that everything is run in order to get the code through to production. And then I guess one that isn't really linked to code itself, but a lot of improvements were being made and are being made still in sort of diversity and inclusion in the Earth observation sphere. And it's been really interesting having been involved in hiring in the software development area for the last 18 months. It's really hard to see how there's going to be an increase in inclusion and diversity. And so I think that's where we really need to try and push the skills that we are talking about in order to get more people into the software development area. So I just wanted to pull this out, actually, which is a tweet from Maximes, who you may know from the Minds Behind Maps podcast. It's a very good podcast if you're into that sort of thing. So he is a data scientist, and he came into geospatial probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And as he says here, one of the things that if he was getting into data science, and by this he sort of means geospatial data science and software engineering, is learning sort of the boring bits. So all of the stuff that I was talking about around Git, why you need it, how it works, what all the extra functionality is in GitHub, and making sure that you have reproducible environments and that sort of thing. So I guess to sort of finalize my point, really the opportunities are huge in software development. And obviously there's a lot of crossover between Earth observation and geospatial software development. And a lot of the things that I've talked about aren't black or white. There's it's a gradient between them all. But I think it's very exciting times to be having the skills that allow you to deal with some of these huge data sets and process them in the ways that clients are interested in. So the types of skills that are really in need are sort of obviously a good understanding or great understanding of Python, but things like fast API, understanding different cloud infrastructures and how they differ, React on the front end and that sort of thing. And I think that what we need to be doing, particularly in some of our university situations, is making sure that students come out with these open source tooling skills that can then be used, because the earning potential, as I've seen sort of talking to various people around the sort of geospatial software ecosystem, the earning potential is very, very good. And there really is a need for skilled staff. Being able to find people with the right geospatial skills, open source geospatial skills, is very tricky at the moment. So, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to leave my details here as well. So that was a quick sort of squiz through what I've seen in the last year or so. I'll be able to take one question if there is one, and then I'll have to run to my laptop and deal with stuff for the next talk. I'm very happy if there aren't any. Cool, thank you.